The world has its eyes set on NFT, AI, and blockchain. Buzzwords, but what do they actually mean for your product? What does it truly mean to create and grow an NFT community? The success of these communities lies on gamification, innovative engagement strategies, and understanding the changing developments in blockchain infrastructure for building powerful NFT communities. And I know that this can sound scary to most, but not to a brilliant woman that will be with us on the podcast. Susan Falola, CTO and founder of Jubix, a stakeholder as a service platform which aims to improve fairness in the way people work and collaborate on projects together. Susan has more than 16 years experience across finance, strategy, operations, marketing, and technology. You have a question for us live? I'm sure she'll be able to answer it for you. She's extremely passionate about EDI policies, determined to create more equitable opportunities for all, and providing consultations concerning DEI and finance. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups live show. I'm Naily Makangu from Athena Leaders. As a tech consultant and startup advisor, I will answer live the burning question that you have on your journey to Series A+. Subscribe and tune in every week for top tips to meet amazing guests, startup founders, investors, and more. More importantly, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Susan, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to finally have the opportunity to talk to you about your community. I've seen a lot of amazing things on Jubix, and also kind of your story has been very inspiring, from everything that I've seen. So I can't wait to share it with the audience. Do you want to start by introducing yourself and what Jubix is?
Well, I'd like to first thank you for having me on your amazing show, Nelly. Really appreciate it. It's been lovely to actually, meet you and also learn about your experience and your journey so far. So yeah, I'll explain who I am. My name is Susan Falola, and like Nelly said, I am the founder of Jubix. So Jubix is a fintech marketplace that supplies stakeholders as a service. We do this by gamifying and matching users' interests and skills to talent, companies, and investment. We do this so that they can collaborate, formulate, and innovate together. So obviously, like Nelly said, I am an experienced expert of 16 plus years across finance, strategy, operations, marketing, and technology. But as an inclusive leader, I like to lead from the back and champion others by enhancing their skills and opportunities. I'm really keen to make sure that people are in charge of their finance like never before, by using gamified products to actually bring in key stakeholders into an ecosystem that benefits all. Thank you, Nelly.
Brilliant. No, that's really excited. So first, because obviously you mentioned the word gamifying quite a few times there in relation to the platform. How can you explain gamification and the reason why it's important now, especially with what we're going to with the world and the change that we're seeing in technology?
Absolutely. So currently, the global gamification market is expected to increase at a compound annual growth rate of 27.99% during the forecast period. The global gamification market size has estimated at a USD of 10.5 billion in 2021, wow. And is expected to reach around 96.8 billion by 2030. So you can imagine, everybody really needs to go towards the gamification market. But what does
don't want to let be out of that.
Exactly. Gamification actually means when, you're incentivizing, key stakeholders or key employees or participants of your community to access certain services or products that you may be, trying to sell or even advertise. And how you do this is basically by implementing certain gamified features within their onboarding experience. So what do I mean by that? So let's say you have, a cream business or a trainer business. So now by getting users to buy your product, you use some kind of gamification where they have to play a game or they have to be involved in, kind of a competitive game layout where they are incentivized to now come into, your company or service based on the game that they played. So it's not that you're actually selling them the product directly, but you're using a game to actually incentivize them to come towards your product. So it really gives that kind of play on how we deliver services now, instead of actually, targeting customers, where customers feel like they're overwhelmed with so many emails and mail spams that basically target them based on their user experience across the internet. But now we're using gamification to actually bring in these users based on the way they interact with games.
Yeah, and I guess for me as well, I mean, well, I used to be a massive gamers. I don't play as much. Seeing that when I went to uni, my brother stayed with the PlayStation, so I kind of stopped. But I grew up playing a lot of games, and for me, anything that has gamification, this idea of going from small challenges or just kind of keeping me interested to go discover new worlds, like they call them these days, it's always been something quite particular. And I'm glad to see that this mentality is being brought as well, just way more than just the proper gaming world into product, and as you said, attracting people on the platform. So if I was to go on Jubix, and how would you attract me on Jubix using games?
So what we do, we actually have three different ways to actually access Jubix. So you can access Jubix through our main app, which is the Jubix app, but we also have a gaming app. So that will have a different URL. So if you can imagine, that person is being onboarded into Jubix through the gaming URL. So they are first going towards a game, but then being redirected to the main app, Jubix. And also we use video. So we have a video streaming service that will also be able to coordinate those same users within the video streaming service to then interact with our main application, Jubix. So our current game is called Game Over, because we believe when Jubix hits the market, it will literally be game over.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so we're trying to bring the elements of shapes and creating shapes and pictures, but also using it as a collaboration tool. So when a user reaches certain levels within inside Jubix, they will also be able to collaborate with other users that have reached those certain levels. And then it also goes on with teams. So if a whole team reaches a certain level, then we will also match them to other teams that have reached that level. So it really gives that emphasis on collaboration and also just fun and engagement. So if you can imagine from an internal perspective, employees, maybe, they've had a long day, especially on a Monday, and they want to, feel re-energized before lunch. So let's say they're just working on their computer and all of a sudden an automation comes in and it says play game, right? Everybody's computer is just, shut down and say play game. So at that point, they're incentivized to play the game. They play the game, interact with the game, and their brain, becomes back to a higher esteem because of the game that they played. But also the benefits and the value of the game they played goes back to their performance levels in terms of, the executives looking at how they interact with one another.
Yeah, and there's also a lot to be said for remote teams at the moment, or people who don't always, or even hybrid team, let's say, where they might not always be together and need to build a relationship as well. So you could really even change one of the meetings. As I usually advise people, you don't need to create more meetings for the teams to get together, but one of the team meetings could be about this idea of let's get to know each other using a game. So that's a lot easier than just putting people in on a call and say, now speak, get to know each other. So I think I quite like the idea of using this gamification in a way that can also help people to be more productive and to work well together.
But it's also intended to further innovate and inspire, people to, engage with the product and the services, but also addresses certain developers and designers incorporate game-like aspects within non-game goods or services. So you have like a hybrid approach. So you have the whole enterprise approach, but you also have, the personal approach, so that people can learn in a professional manner, but with a gamification underlying system.
Yeah. And I also agree. I think that one space where people are starting to think about it differently, but I'd love to see a bit more a bit more gamification when it comes to the learning, because I think the way we learn hasn't really changed. And even when I look at online platform and online courses, they tend to be very linear, right? This is the module, this is the quiz, but there is no an aspect of gamification, which, you know, I think that, like you mentioned with the statistics at the beginning, this is the next space that people will be looking at very soon.
Absolutely. And they're also using AI models. So they're using AI models in gamification to also learn about the users. So how the users interact with different functions within the game, how long it takes for a user to, you know, complete a game. So it also is actually taking into account the user strengths and weaknesses. So that also helps, you know, to adapt certain frameworks within, you know, certain organizations, and also how to deal with employee retention.
Brilliant. Even more data on that as well. And so now when we look at the second aspect that you've mentioned in terms of what GBIX does, it's really to help people that want to work together and collaborate. So how is that work? So for example, if I want to join a project as a Java developer, do I just join any projects, or do I need to apply? Are we talking more Fiverr lookalike, or even better than that?
I would say even better than that. So what we do, we simplify the admin, right? So if you look at Upwork, Fiverr, Bidvine, Crowdcube, Kickstarter, all of these, you know, really massive platforms. And don't get me wrong, you know, hats off to them. They've been amazing, and you know, they've been the traditional structures that we're used to. But actually simplifying the whole connection piece. So actually just, you know, pulling it down to what is your interest? What are your skills? What are the key attributes that you need to match with other connectees, right? So we connect the talent with the investor and the company and the investor with the talent. So it's a three-way model, and that's kind of where we see ourselves in Web3. We believe that we're creating a triangular model where everybody's incentivized. So even the investor is incentivized by the employee retention with that company based on the investment value that he's, you know, able to offer. So on that basis, you know, when you apply to GBIX as a JavaScript developer, you are actually applying as a potential employee or a potential stakeholder. So potentially you could be a co-founder, or you could be hired with a stake within that company. So you would fill out a set of questions, and based on that question, we would use a questionnaire. We would utilize that data to match you across our network with all of the people within the network that have the same attributes that you need, or that they need or require.
Okay, yeah, that's quite interesting, because I think that could even be a game changing for the startup land. As you know, there's a lot of great idea, whether we're talking, startup that work on the charity sector or not. One of the biggest challenges at the beginning, especially the more complicated your solution is finding the great people that you want to collaborate and that can also go on the journey with you. You know, as you know, running your own company, finding, you know, whether we're talking co-founders or the first member of the teams. And I see that GBIX could be a way to even explore ideas before you bring them on board, whilst at the same time those people are not losing. So it's kind of a bit of a win-win situation there.
Absolutely. So a lot of people have asked me to, if I match with investment, because I told them that as an investor, if the investor feels that you're not utilizing his money correctly within GBIX, because you can actually see the way your money is being utilized. So if the investor feels that his money is not him, you know, he or she feels that his money is not being utilized correctly, they can move their investment to another idea within inside GBIX. So it's still within inside the GBIX ecosystem, but the money is moved to another business. But that business that has lost the money can also be matched with another investor. So it's kind of like a recycling model where, you know, as you know, money gets moved somewhere else, another match could be made, and you could basically get even more than what you had. So it's not really, it's kind of a win-win situation. Obviously, there could be also the basis that you don't get any matches, but there would be a guarantee that you would get matches, you know, in due course. So that's the emphasis, that every single time it's a, you know, triangulated formula where people are incentivized, and see the value, the liquidity value from the get-go. So the connections are actually calculated. So me and you, Nelly, matching on Jubix, we would match and I would know how much equity you could offer me and how much equity I could offer you.
Wow. And that's another question a lot of people ask me when I do a startup advisory. They get really excited. They found that, that co-founder or whoever on the team, and they're like, yes, we're just going to give them X, X amount. And my question is always, why? What do you base that amount on? Because it can be a bit of a black art to calculate that. And I know that there are some calculators online that you can use, but for someone who's outside of the startup world, coming in cold, that can be quite difficult. So I can see the benefits of having that in Jubix. One of the things that I found quite fascinating just listening to you is how the different types of very complicated technology that you have used to build the platform, which is, I'm sure there's many startups that are probably listening to that or wannabe startups, and they're thinking, where do we start? But before we go there, I'd like to go back a bit in your story and ask you, where did you started in terms of your studies? Were you in technology or straight into, did you come from another field?
So I actually come from a finance background. So I used to work for Barclays in talent management and investment banking. So for me, it was more the fact that, I'd worked in finance. I'd also worked in, talent management. So I feel like Jubix is, one of the same. So in terms of, the talent management side, obviously, with the matching of the talent, and then obviously the investment banking side, having that investing banking model that people can actually see a visual calculation of their stakeholders. So that's kind of how I would say the talent in me was born. But in terms of the idea itself, it was actually based on me building an edtech idea in 2016. And the idea was actually the metaverse for children. And I know a lot of people be like, "Oh, you're just, you're just going with all these buzzwords, because you saw it out there." Definitely, I didn't know it was called, it was classified the metaverse. But I had built a brand, a holistic brand based on a child's clothing line, and it had like a fruit emblem on a t-shirt, and it was 3D, and it actually had the scent of the apple, the banana, the grape. So that was the technology aspect. But then also when you put your phone on the fruit, the child would actually follow an animation. And this animation would teach them about STEM activities through animation. So you've got the gamification, but you've also got the educational piece where the child has got the clothing, the cognitive sensory aspects, but also has the imaginary, technical aspects of, following this animation based on a baby entrepreneur who has teenage friends that he kind of teaches all about innovation. So when I built that idea, I spent £30,000 in the business, and don't get me wrong, £30,000 to me was a lot of money. So at that head, I was like, I can't go any further. I mean, they were telling me that I needed another 1 million to do the animation, and I was like, okay, 30K I've spent. Now you ask me to spend another 1 million. How do I go past this roadblock? And that was kind of where Jubix was born. Creating an ecosystem that gives the finance as well as you said, the team that you need. And when I mean team, I'm not just saying the developer. I'm talking about the CRM agent, the strategist, the marketer, the legal, every single aspect you need in a business. You will get that from day one of joining Jubix. So we automatically match you to all of those different coordinates without you even asking or telling us to do that.
Yeah, and so if we go back, stay a bit longer on the edtech aspect, because this is one of the things that when I found out about that, I was really impressed because he actually brought together, the fashion world of wearing with clothes and also the technology, which again, I think this is where we are going these days, especially when it comes to a bit of the metaverse, but not just the metaverse, being able to be immersed learning. When you go to a museum these days, you scan a code and something happen. Of course, it's not as awesome as you would have done it because it's still basic at the moment, but I can see that happening as we're going forward. Now, your background was in finance, and when you had that idea and you're thinking, okay, yes, I know there's a need for this, I'm gonna jump in. How did you start working on this? Did you have an outsourced teams, or did you do most of the development yourself? how did you make the jump from the financial to the technical hat?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a jump. I mean, so I went deep into manufacturing because obviously I started with the clothing aspect, and yeah, don't go into fashion without having expertise. Like, I didn't know how. Like, I just thought you just call a manufacturer and say, "Yeah, I need a couple T-shirts. I need a strawberry on it." But there's so much more into it. It's like building a car. When you buy a T-shirt from the shop, really put some respect on that T-shirt's name, because there's so many specifications. There's the tech pack. The drawing. So where I started from, because I was naturally an artist myself, so I'm a natural artist. Besides from working in investment banking and talent management, but I used to draw from a young age, and I've always been able to articulate my ideas through drawing. So not maybe articulate them as well through through my words, but through drawing my ideas, I was always able to articulate what I meant. So I basically just took templates or T-shirts offline, drew my strawberry, kind of drew my logo. It was called Signed by Bubba Little. So Bubba Little is the actual character. And, also the characters around Bubba Little were actually based on people that I met and collaborated with me. So, there's 9 characters altogether, and we haven't launched the other NFT collections, but we launched Momo Code. But Momo Code is actually somebody that I met, a young 21-year-old coder who worked with me in the initial stages of Bubba Little. So when he worked on me then, obviously that was like the heritage. So then I didn't realize that when I went into Jubix and then building, I'm sure we're going to cover it, the Global Tech Sprint Leadership Program, that I've now been able to enlist a global, team of developers from around the world to actually support the bootstrapping of Jubix to launch it to market, which is just extremely valuable in itself. So that's why I know that, we've gone halfway there. All we need is the investment to back it up. And that would also prove the product, right? Prove what Jubix could potentially do for many other people. If I'm able to get the team as now the investment, it will really, showcase what Jubix could really potentially do in the market itself.
Yeah. So I love the fact that you went into manufacturing first and you thought, oof, that's quite hard. So many things that I need to pick up. And said, oh, by the way, that's only half of it because I need to do the animations and I need to have everything else. And then the next step was, of course, with Jubix, which is you've done an amazing work, especially getting people together to do this. But when you first started, you had a clear idea of where you wanted to go. But then how do you get the first team of engineers to start implementing, the blockchains and all of the other technology that you are using at the moment?
So I think what it is really being collaborative and inclusive. So creating a collaborative and inclusive framework, and also do not micromanage people. I used to do that a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of people that will be testament to that, where you think that you need to be on call, right? And you need to talk and talk and talk about your product and how amazing it's going to be to the people that are going to develop it. But actually giving them, the kind of the overview and letting them, go ahead and do, do what it is that you've given them instructions to do, actually gives them kind of like an open environment to feel safe, comfortable, and included. And I think that is what I provided within the Global Tech Sprint Leadership Program, is an environment where people feel safe, comfortable, but also included. So they are able to participate on a peer-to-peer level with other developers globally. So they also increase their network in terms of, the people that are participating in the program, but also the value of the experts that I bring into the program. So I bring different experts, from various fields. So people will think, oh, it's the Tech Sprint Leadership Program, so it's all about tech. No, what I do is bring the developers in, but also teach them at least a base level of every single other skill. So when they leave the program, they're armored with a lot more knowledge than just the technical aspects when they go into their careers.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about that program? Because I love watching the highlight you have on YouTube of the people that join the program, and then other things that they do. So do you want to tell the audience a little bit more about? I guess first, why did you feel like we needed this program, and how did you implement it?
So the whole emphasis was that obviously, like I said, I was lacking in finance to obviously start building or paying for technologists to build my product. At that point in time, I'd also participated in some hackathons, some tech sprints. I was part of the FCA Women's Empowerment Tech Sprint in 2021. And being a participant of those tech sprints, I realized how hard we had worked, in maybe 4 days or 2 weeks or whatever the requirements were. And they brought so many people, experts, people from around the world that had industry knowledge, only for the tech sprint or the hackathon to finish or close, for us to just be put, slapped onto a Slack channel, and that's that.
Do you know what? That's sorry to interrupt here, but that's something I found quite frustrating as well, because I love to do that as well. Just
yeah,
curiosity and learning in a way, just joining a hackathon or something like that. So yesterday I was at an event in Madrid, and they had one is about creating a sustainable idea in different areas. So it could be tourism, clothes, whatever it was. And it was an intense 3 hours, really good fun. I met some lots of random people at the events. And we came up with this idea because one of my biggest problems is because I travel a lot, when you go to somewhere else and you go for an event, you need to have a certain outfit for the event and then enough for the day. But if it's only one evening event, can I just go somewhere and just borrow a dress? I just pay to kind of hire a dress, and that's it, rather than having to buy many dresses for different events, especially when I'm speaking on stage. You're thinking, can you find a way to solve it? So we came up with this idea of make it okay to be able to just hire clothes that are not like noise suits or things like that. And how would you do that? So it was quite good fun. And at the end, there was also a pitch. So we had to pitch. And of course, everything was in Spanish, which was quite interesting to brainstorm in Spanish and then stand in front of the thing and do my 1 minute pitch. But, at the end of the event, I felt like, I want to continue a bit more, right? And that's it. I'm just back to my house, and the idea will just evaporate. And now my brain is thinking, actually, I could just try and push it further and see what would happen.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I feel that if they had like a solution like Jubix, even these hackathons, they could all be put inside Jubix after the hackathon finishes. So it could really help to grow these businesses or ideas and get them off ground. I mean, the global startup market is set to be, well, it's over 3 trillion, and it's got a 20% growth rate in the next couple of years. So the potential is immense. The global potential is going to be out of this world. And until the corporates, the big institutions realize this, they're really going to be kind of sticking themselves in the mud, because actually they really need to build a hybrid approach to the startup world instead of buying them out. So not buying out a startup, but actually working hand in hand with a startup to actually build them up instead of actually trying to shut them down, because actually innovation is going to happen, especially within the tech market. We've seen with GPT where a lot of industries are complaining about how it's taking over so many industries, but actually this is what tech is inevitably going to be. It's going to take over a lot of the markets. We're going to see most of the markets have tech behind them. We've seen it already in tech, med tech, just to name a few. But even in regards to the software as a service market, between 2021 and 2025, is expected to grow by 99.99 billion. So, you can imagine, the growth rate in that, if likes of AI and, chat NFT come evolve. So these are really big markets that people really need to get their hands in now. And definitely, when it comes to the NFT market, when people are talking about communities and stuff, really add value. Don't just make up, something just to kind of get in there. Make some heritage, back your NFT with some heritage and a real value proposition.
Yeah. And you've built an incredible NFT community. And I guess, how does it feel, especially for you, the first time when you're starting seeing people jumping into the community to help your project and to also help each other?
I mean, till now, I'm a bit still overwhelmed, to be honest. Just knowing that just being yourself makes people, want to participate. I mean, I'm just myself, and most of the time I'm not really online. So when I say I'm not online, when I'm on call, I don't really show my face. So most of the time, these people are talking to, a black box with S in the middle. And just based on, me being myself is what people are really, moving towards. And, I'm not even trying to boast myself, but I just believe that me giving them, confidence, providing an inclusive atmosphere for them to learn, grow, and develop, but also kind of pushing them out there. So they're like, wow, she's pushing me out there, and I'm getting loads of contacts and people are contacting me. Like, I'm not really scared if they're going to leave, because I'm building them up to leave, if that makes sense. So I'm building them up so that they can lead their own selves and even be their own decision makers. And on that basis, they haven't left. So it's just to retain their employees.
Yeah, that's incredible, because I guess, I see a lot of communities being created these days, and people always ask the same question: how do you build a community, whether it's an NFT-based community or not? And I find that sometimes the engagement really depends on the people running the community, or rather than through content, rather than through, as you've mentioned, how do you create an environment where people feel nurtured enough to want to stay, rather than just absorbing content or discussions or non-ending messaging on WhatsApp where there's no actual value being shared. So yeah, I love what you've done.
I think people are more interested in the numbers than the value. So of course, like when you join a network and they've got like thousands and something in their network, I mean, we all do want that, right? But actually, I still would want to know every single member. And if I believe that certain members are not talking up or participating, I would always call them if they were part of my network. So I would be like, or I'd message them, DM them separately from, the network. Oh, hi, I haven't heard from you in a while. What's going on? I do think that there's a lot of networks out there that they think that they're building networks, but actually they're building, a set of friends within a network. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like 2,000 people, but you only hear about 5 people within the network all the time, constantly. They keep, banging on about the 10 people within the network, and you've got all of these other people that you don't hear about. So you tend to be in a network that is not very inclusive at all.
Yeah, and I think as well, finding a way to, I think for me, we should move away from numbers. Of course, sadly, numbers are metrics that people love, whether it's a vanity metric, but it's also a way of getting noticed. But for me, one thing I value a lot when I join a group is how interactive and how can I help and support, rather than just being one number. And I think that is what you're doing quite well with the community that you've built, and the way that you're helping people, really support people. Because I think that is, again, another thing I'm looking into as I'm slowly building a community in Madrid with someone else, or they itch to do something. So I'm trying to build a community around entrepreneurship, because I think that there is something lacking here that I can bring and help. And I'm trying to see, how can we bring people together that want to support each other along the journey, open your contact book to others, push people up, mindsets. these days as entrepreneurs, as you know, there are days where you struggle to get out of bed. So how can you have the people around that if they know that you're going through that, you can speak to them and they just call you and say, I'll see you at this place. And so, just to kind of give that person a bit of a chance to get out of the house and move forward. And yeah, I definitely love what you've done, especially on the Jubic side, because it's not even in the same place, it's global, yet people have this attraction and they're really excited when they're speaking to that S on the screen.
Yeah, literally. I wanted to add as well that Jubix actually eliminates all bias representation. So that's including age, sexuality, gender, race, religion, by obviously creating equality in the connection and finance and services. So, our vision is to put people in charge of their finance and collaboration activities, but in an inclusive manner. So when I say that, people connect in Jubix, me and you wouldn't connect as Susan and Nelly. We would connect as, let's say we're both in tech, blue dot and blue dot. So those two blue dots, would, have a calculation figure. Let's say I have 50K, Nelly has 100K. So now as a collective, we have 150K. So that's what makes value added. So it's not how many numbers you have, because actually, even if you have two matches, that value that they bring to your table might be enough for you to begin.
That's quite interesting. I didn't realize the anonymity aspect of that. But before I ask a bit more questions, because I'm sure that a lot of people, especially those who are thinking maybe how to change the way we do recruitments and want to keep it a bit more anonymous for quite a while, at least until you have to start the work. Just a quick reminder to our audience: the last Friday of every month, I think there's one coming up, we do some mentoring for startups. It's completely free. You have any problems, tech problem, product problems, then come on board. We make sure that we have the right person, the right mentor to pair you with, and make sure that your 30 minutes is quite valuable. And as well, one of the things that's quite exciting as a journey for the Mary Poppins of startups, we are getting quite close to 100 subscribers. And that is very exciting for me, as the podcast has been growing very organically, right? So I haven't really invested a lot into really shouting about this. It's really word of mouth, people finding me and going, oh my God, this is bringing us a lot of value. So if you know someone who this will benefit, do please share the podcast with them. And of course, if you've been watching this and you absolutely love what we do click on the subscribe button. I'm always available online, anywhere you can see me for feedback, request, topics you like me to go on about. And in fact, I do a lot of videos as well based on the advisory session that I do, so that whatever problems I find on a one-on-one gets discussed online, whether just with me or with an amazing guest like Susan. So do click on the subscribe button. Do make my day reaching 100 subscribers, and I'm sure I'm gonna share a picture on me of me on LinkedIn with the biggest ice cream that I can find. Please make my day. So when you go back, Susan, to what you've said about when you go on the platform, you get two dots. So you want to make sure that whatever the decision making is very inclusive and is unbiased. So the way you do that is by having dots, so that we don't know the other person, gender, race, or whatever it is. So it's really about the potential that the person bring and the work that you've seen them do. So it's very unbiased, as you've said. Now, what I'm interested to find out as well, because I know that people are thinking about that in terms of recruitment platforms, but one of the worries is that they might lose the connection with the person, right? But of course, you've demonstrated that it works. So what kind of feedback are you getting now from people who've used the platform compared to when you first thought about the ideas, and the worry that people might not be able to really connect without knowing a little bit more about the other person or even seeing their face?
So actually, I used to think that it would be an issue. Like you said, it was something that we kind of had to figure out. Why would people want to connect with someone they can't see their face or can't see their business name, right? Because even the companies that connect inside Jubix, they're listed as companies, not as company X or company Y. But what it is like I said, is the financial value. that incentivizes people to participate. So, if you get a pool of matches and it says 100K today, and then tomorrow it says 200K, I mean, it kind of incentivizes you. Oh my God, I need to communicate with these people, right? And it's at that point that you'll be prompted to go into a meeting. So just similar like a Google meeting, you'll be prompted to connect with those people, and at that point you can show your face or show your ID, and at that point, remember, it's a group of people pulled into that meeting. So the bias would be known quite quickly, because when people come out of that meeting, they have to rate the persons within that meeting. So you kind of would be able to tell the bias. But also within our algorithm, we also have an unbiased algorithm calculation. So let's say you said someone was a 10, we would automatically give them a 7. And if you said someone was a 5, we would automatically raise it to a 7. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we always kind of average it out so that actually it gives more equality. So somebody that is given a 5 is actually now given a 7, and someone that's given a 10 is actually now given a 7. So it really gives that whole, equal opportunity vibe, right? So even though Nelly thinks, I'm brilliant, actually Nelly might be biased, right? So that's why our algorithm already takes out the bias out of Nelly's decision making.
Yeah, but I still think she's brilliant, by the way. So another question that I have, and of course, before I say that, thanks to Brigitte for the claps there. Brigitte said wow on the chat, and I'm sure that was really in relation to the growth of the podcast. And we are hitting 100 subscribers soon, and that's only the beginning, because we always have a lot of exciting things to come and a lot of exciting ways to grow our community. When we look at implementing all of those platforms, and I want to focus a little bit on blockchain, because this is the one that a lot of people are thinking of. How can we keep a ledger or keep track of all of the transactions regardless of the application? Now people are thinking of using blockchain to go beyond just finance, where it kind of started, and that's also very exciting, but it can be quite daunting as well, especially for startups that do not startup founders that might not have a tech background, or they might not have a CTO in-house. So if you could share, I guess, one great experience that you've had with blockchain and one nightmare that you have with it, and what you've learned from that could help as well position other startups founder.
Absolutely. So the nightmare of blockchain is trying to build a blockchain service by yourself. A lot of people, want to be, the next Bitcoin, or they want to be the next, Ethereum. They're trying to build, off the back of Bitcoin's extravaganza, but actually for us, we want to utilize blockchain as a service. So there is actually cloud platforms that offer blockchain as a service, so you don't actually have to build your own blockchain service. There is cloud platforms such as AWS, Microsoft, and Oracle that also offer blockchain as a service. So you can utilize those services within those cloud platforms to be able to operate your product on a blockchain system that has already been tested, is compliant, and also has the regulatory arm behind it. And obviously, if you don't want to go down that route, because a lot of people will say, but this is a centralized, business, obviously we know the Amazons, the Microsofts, and now the Metas of the world are very centralized businesses, but we can't go too far too quick. So we need to take a hybrid approach before we become fully decentralized. So that's what that's the kind of approach we're taking. That yes, we want to be decentralized in some aspects, but in some aspects we also want to be compliant. We also want to be regulated. So we don't want to kind of build a business, build a community, and then be faced with, a lot of legal issues down the line. Mm-hmm. So that's why we've chosen to, build a hybrid approach up until the time that we can become fully decentralized. So that would be my advice to other startups or other people within the blockchain space that really, enjoy the whole inclusiveness that blockchain can bring, but also the transparency, because that's the key word here when it comes to blockchain is the transparency in contribution, the transparency in transactions, and the transparency in the the solutions that are built off of the blockchain service. So I would say, really do your homework, as well as have the right funding in place if you are going to choose to build your own blockchain solution. Have the right finance in place to be able to scale that product, but also potentially utilize the blockchain as a service now, and then grow. And then as you scale, you can now, revert back to your decentralized, fully decentralized model.
Yeah, learn to walk first before you can run. And in
Yeah.
fact, I think this is a brilliant advice. As in addition, a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about the technology, but there's this huge aspect of the actual product and what you are building within the technology. So if you invest a lot of money on do it yourself to make sure that it's decentralized from day one, and if you're not in the right market, pivoting will be way more expensive, because we know, it's not cheap to build a blockchain solution. So yes, I absolutely love this advice. Now, one last thing that we cover, because I thought we need to squeeze that in, and as we're getting towards the end of the podcast, is the amazing collaborations that you've built with, I believe, was Microsoft, Oracle, and AWS. Do you want to talk through that as well? Because because obviously, you've first have a big community that's global, and then you think, I'm not even going to the small people. I'm just going to go straight to those big guys and ask for collaborations. Do you want to talk through that?
Yeah, so with Jubix, we're building a multi-cloud solution. So for us, we felt that we really needed the marketing arms to leverage, from their global presence. So, really banging on the doors of Microsoft, Oracle, and AWS. I mean, AWS actually, we won, a huge amount of credits through the Google Black Founders competition. So even though we didn't win, we were awarded, a level of credits to use on AWS. But then with Oracle and Microsoft, it was kind of like banging down the door saying, look, we're all about diversity and inclusion. We deserve to have more credits because our product is going to, provide a lot of opportunities for people around the world. And, it took over a year or so to really, home in to them that, look, Jubix needs to be in collaboration with you guys. And finally, we were able to win the amount of credits that we have. So we are going to be, available on all of those clouds platforms, and we want to use it as a promotional tool and marketing tool to, expand on our existing community.
Oh, that's amazing. And again, when obviously, you say that it takes about a year to build this level of collaboration, especially with the one with Microsoft and bang on the door. Every time that you got a no, what got you up and running and going back and keep on knocking on the door again?
I'm very determined. And what is, I'm passionate about people. So I think for me, it wasn't just about me doing something for myself. It was more about doing something for the people, the masses, right? And I think for me, that's where recognition starts for me. That if I can leverage so many people in the world, I'm already recognizable. I'm a legend. Because I've been able to help how many people around the world, and they've been able to leverage just from my skills and been able to grow even maybe past me, right? So that makes me feel rewarded to know that these people are excelled just based on my little input. And when I say little, is because you're only making them know the skills that they already have. But before, maybe they weren't so confident, or people didn't listen to them, or didn't give them a comfortable space to develop and aspire. But once I did that, they realized and really channeled their talent, and really went forward at miles ahead of me. So I really find that really rewarding.
Oh, brilliant. Well, All I can say to that is thank you, Susan, for sharing your brilliance to the world and determination to keep going as it's benefiting the lives of so many people. And yet, Jubix is still quite at the early stage, and I know that there's still more to come. There's still more of new ideas that you are working with the team. So for those whom have never heard of Jobix, I'll definitely ask you to try it and know that a year, 2 years from now, what you have now will continue to blossom. I have complete faith in the work that you are doing. And thanks again for your contribution on the show. It's great to have an expert that not only talked about the theoretical aspects of all of those amazing technologies, AI, NFT, blockchain, but to really see an example of how you can positively use gamifications and all of those ideas in your startups, and also the creativity and innovation that you have of not only the platform and building it, how to get the people, but also on the features that you have. So for those who want to find out more about you, how can I find out about Susan Falola?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn as Susan Falola. You can catch me on LinkedIn, but also check out our website, www.jubix.co.uk. So Jubix is spelled Juubix, and it's actually two words in one. So if you imagine your jukebox and your Rubik's Cube, so that's how we created the name Jubix. And we're on all social media platforms. So I'm sure if you type Jubix in any social media platform, we are on most of those platforms. And as well as you can contact us at info@jubix.co.uk if you would like to collaborate with us. We're very interested and keen to get to know more about you.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Susan, and thanks, Brigitte, for staying with us throughout the episode.
Thank you, Bridget.
To the rest of the audience, do remember that we do run mentoring sessions once a month the last Friday. It's virtual, so you don't have to leave your house. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, and we'll be more than happy to work with you. It's free sessions, about 30 minutes, and so come in with your problem, technology, product, whatever it is. I'm sure that you're going to leave the session very delighted and with something that you can implement. And of course, do remember that we are on our goal of reaching 100 subscribers. So that's one of my very young nieces, and she absolutely loves YouTube. She wants to be a YouTuber. She always looks at my platform and says, "Oh, when are you going to get to 100 subscribers again?" Well, I'm nearly there. So let's make it happen for us. In the meantime, let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.